Right, so greetings. Hello. Welcome. And nice to see everyone.
Can't see you.
Do you think it's still bad, do you?
Yeah.
How's that better? Is that better?
No.
No. Hello. Right, okay. I mean, I know it looks bad on the screen. I think it will be fine when, in the actual recording. So I'm going to start again. Right, so greetings, hello, welcome to the Philosophy Club here in Betet in the middle of France. We haven't had a meeting for a few days, weeks. Been quite intense what's been going on here. And it's been really terrible weather, and so philosophy's had a little break, but we're back now because it's IMBOLC. It's the 1st of February.
Had a philosophical break.
We've had a philosophical break for the really cold spell. We had snow and all kinds of nonsense. So we'll just do a rundown of what's been happening in the micro world of the Museum of the Muses and also in the world. So one interesting thing, the first thing I'll start off with is the spring term meeting of the International Institute of Peace Studies and Global Philosophy, which I direct, and its Zoom channel and YouTube channel and all that. So we had our meeting on the 30th of January, just a couple of days ago. It was very interesting, lively meeting actually. A number of interesting people came, so thanks to everyone that turned up, and we had a lively agenda. The Institute, let me just explain, was set up way back in 1991 when I was on staff at the Institute of Education at the University of London. And my job was to help create an Institute of Peace Studies within the system of the University of London. And we did, and we used to have meetings and discussions and publications and lectures. So it was set up, and that's still going, I'm still running it. We're not based at the University of London, however, unfortunately. And most universities now, they're under a lot of commercial pressure to raise funds. And I discovered, peace studies isn't the most lucrative fundraising initiative. And military studies, defence studies, weapons research, all that stuff gets the funding. Peace studies is like the Cinderella of academia. And it's that way in most countries in the world, apart from a few countries prioritise peace. Stockholm has a Centre for Peace Research funded by the government. Oslo has a Centre for Peace Studies at the university, and Denmark too. And there's quite a few think tanks in Germany that do peace research. There's one in Paris, so they're few and far between. But there is a network of us, and I'm sort of keeping the institute going. If the University of London wants to give us a building in Bloomsbury, and fine, I'm happy to accept the offer. But at the moment, the phone isn't going. So that's one thing. And the other thing is this World Intellectual Forum, which was set up much more recently in 2017, and that also met. So we had a joint meeting. We discussed how can philosophical dialogue lead to more effective thinking around peace? How can peace policy be developed as an alternative to peace? Well, there is no peace policy research going on the planet. There's lots of foreign policy, we use that term, which is a strange word, like foreign policy, but that is the official jargon. We have economic policy, security policy, defence policy, thousands of think tanks. There's only one that deals with peace policy, and that's my institute, which is absurd, but it shows you where we're at as a planet. And we also talked about our last meeting with from Istanbul previously in December, when we jointly ran it with a thing called Global Vision 2000, and the director of that joined us again for our meeting on the 30th of January. We heard back from colleagues from all over the world. It was a very interesting discussion. And I want to highlight one thing that comes up, which is we heard a very interesting and sad and moving talk by a Kashmiri who lives in Britain and who runs the Liberal Democrat Kashmir group, Friends of Kashmir they're called, and he spoke about the problems in Kashmir, and he said the statistics are rather shocking. There's 900,000 Indian Army soldiers occupying the Indian part of Kashmir, which is the most heavily militarised region in the world, more than Gaza, more than anywhere else. And the human rights situation of these Kashmiris, most of whom are Muslim, not all, is pretty dire. He gave us some statistics. He told us that there's a population of 15 million living in Indian-occupied Kashmir, and then there's nearly 1 million Indian soldiers there. It's like 1 to 15. He also said that 10,000 young girls and women have gone missing in Indian-occupied Kashmir, and families don't know where they've gone. They have no information. Have they been sex trafficked? Have they been killed? Have they been raped and murdered? There's just no knowledge of this. The families, and that's a lot, 10,000. I mean, I've just gone through the death of my one daughter that just deceased, and it utterly gutted me and still does. But can you imagine 10,000 families living through that in a situation of not knowing what's happened to them? So we heard some very moving and very tragic information. At one point, this excellent speaker, he himself started crying because I don't know if he's personally, well, he has been affected because he is from Kashmir. So, these are real people suffering. And then I asked him the question, well, what's the solution to the Kashmir problem? And his vision is, it was always an autonomous region. It was never part of the British Raj, Kashmir. It was never conquered by the British. We always honoured and kept it as an independent little state, like Bhutan or somewhere. And why can't it go back to being an autonomous, independent state, which is military free? Neither the Pakistani side or the Indian side need vast armies there. And he said it could be a buffer state between the two nuclear powers of India and Pakistan. It should be a nuclear-free zone, no nuclear weapons stationed there by either side. And its strength is actually culture and philosophy. The Kashmir Shaivite tradition is one of the most profound of all the branches of Hinduism. And it's deep, deep stuff, the metaphysics of it. My friend Gavin Flood of the University of Oxford wrote a master's thesis on Kashmir Shaivism because it's so profound. But then also in the Islamic community, Kashmir has provided some of the greatest Sufis of India and some of their greatest intellectuals. The Nehru dynasty that ruled India after independence was from Kashmir originally. So, I mean, it's an intellectual superpower. It's a cultural superpower. It has beautiful natural resources. It needn't be a bone of contention. So his vision as the Lib Dem spokesman for Kashmir is both sides withdraw, let Kashmir be an independent neutral state like Switzerland, and everyone respect that. It can have trade deals with both Pakistan and India. I don't see what's wrong with that. My friend Sam Petroda came to the meeting, who's quite a high-up figure in the Indian community of the diaspora. He was a friend of the late Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, and is a friend of the current head of the Congress Party, Rahul Gandhi. I don't see why the Congress Party couldn't take that on board as a policy. I think it would win them a lot of votes, certainly from the Muslim population of India, which is 200 million strong, and from all the decent, sensible Hindus. The trouble is that Modi has made this into a sort of like a racist thing that India has to control Kashmir, and his weaponization of the hatred of Islam is shocking, in my opinion. Modi is not an intellectual. He's not someone who's thought this through. He's a shopkeeper turned politician, and he's a tool of the RSS, which is a neo-fascist party that was responsible for the death of Gandhi. The RSS killed Mahatma Gandhi back in the 40s. That's a fact. And it was modelled on the Nazi Party. And our speaker at the meeting, Moeen Yassin, pointed this out, you know, which was, I think it's important people know this stuff. So, anyway, so we discussed the Kashmir problem. We also, of course, discussed Iran and Israel and threats of war and, you know, what can we do with the global architecture that's going on. Glenn Martin couldn't come. He helped organise a big meeting in Pondicherry for the World Parliament, which he's president of, and they're going on ahead. Their idea is the UN is too corrupt, too broken, too stuck in nationalism to do anything much on global issues. So let's start again and create a World Parliament. And there were good people there from all over the planet went. You know, but obviously we live in the real world of nation states, so we have to also work with that system, which is the UN.
It seems like they are on the verge of bankruptcy.
Well, the entire budget of the UN is less than the New York Police Department. New York City has a huge police department budget, which is bigger than the entire UN. Well, you know, that's wrong. Obviously, if we want a functioning civil architecture at a global level, we have to fund it. And that is something that, you know, I feel strongly about. I've spoken twice at UN headquarters in New York. I'm a supporter of the UN and its goals and ideals. I know that Israel doesn't, and has made a personal attack on UNRWA and on everything that the UN stands for, because the UN is responsible for the safety and safekeeping and protection, or should be, of the Palestinian people. So anyway, all this was discussed, and you can watch that video. It will be interesting to people, I think. I won't repeat it all here. I mentioned also the project of the Institute to create a European Peace Agency. We had our colleague from Ireland, Dr Sean English, come, who's, you know, involved with that project. We think, as a European continent, it's time we took peace seriously. And since we take space studies seriously, space research, we have a European Space Agency, which is lovely. I love space. But I think peace is at least as important. Because if we blow up this home planet, there's no more space research possible, because all the telescopes are gone. There was also my friend Ros Cook came, who's an old friend of my mother and an anti-nuclear weapons activist. She reported back on the latest developments with the ending of nuclear weapons on the planet. And we discussed, you know, the trouble is, of course, that the great powers who are nuclear armed are not going to concede their power, because their ego is attached to, I'm a superpower, I've got nuclear weapons, you know, and I can threaten you, so behave. Somehow we have to outthink that kind of mad, mutual assured destruction security that we've got at the moment. And so we discussed all this, and it's very much interesting. And our friend Moeen Yassin was quite, you know, strong in his condemnation of obviously basically the white racist ideology of Trump and what they're doing in America. And, you know, he says, look, this goes back to colonialism, this goes back to the whole history of white racial superiority, and it's now challenged, it's not going to stand. There needs to be a rethinking of the global architecture with every culture, every race, every religion on a level playing field. It's not like one should rule the whole thing. And that's the point of the UN, actually, that every culture, every language, every race is equal, you know, from Japan, China, whatever. So it was a very interesting meeting, and that's worth, you know, checking out. The other thing I want to say is, of course, I want to talk about the situation in Minneapolis that's been going on in the States, which is shocking to any right-thinking person. ICE has got this vast budget, and yet it's not very effective. Under Obama, they did more kicking out people that didn't have the right to be in the States. They got more out than this ICE heavy-handed militarized kind of approach, which is just terrorizing the streets and ended up with killing innocent people like Rene Good and Alex Pretty and people. and others. So we have a real crisis going on in the States, obviously, and the whole world is on tenterhooks watching how this unfolds. And Bruce Springsteen's just done a great song about it, and the bards are back. I think Bob Dylan should do a number as well, because he takes up causes. Well, here's a cause, Bob. Get the songbook out. So I just want to report that I've been looking at the book by John Bolton, who was Trump's national security advisor in his first presidency, and who has spilled the beans on how Trump operates. It's a very interesting book. It's called In the Room at the Time It Happened. John Bolton gives away a lot of detail. It's very interesting in that book, which I've been listening to as a talking book for the last couple of weeks, and I'm just near the end. And Bolton is old school. I don't agree with much of his politics. He's quite a conservative type. But, in a sense that's a good thing, because he can criticise the way Trump makes decisions. What he explains is the detailed decision-making process of Trump is the last guy he spoke to is the guy he's influenced by. Because Trump's attention span is so small, and what Bolton is saying is all the inner cadre of security advisors and people, Pentagon chiefs, they're having to manage Trump all the time, like a kind of grown-up kid with Asperger's or something. So you can't have a normal discussion about policy with Trump because depending on who he's been talking to, and Rudy Giuliani comes in as a very dark influence, because Rudy Giuliani was stirring it up with all kinds of conspiracy theories against Ukraine. All that stuff about Ukraine did all the Russia stuff, it's all Ukraine, it's all Biden's laptop. That all came from Rudy Giuliani, a fantasy in his head. But he pumped it into Trump, who then trots it out. And you can't then get him to unthink it. So Trump turns out, according to this John Bolton book, which I think is 100% accurate, it's a whole thing managing Trump. And so this is going on as we speak, and we're now dealing with, is Trump going to attack Iran or not, again or again or again? And what's going on? I dread to think what's happening in Trump's inner cabal at the moment, as they're having to manage this fundamentally crazy guy who you can't have a rational discussion with him. When he starts talking, he goes off at tangents. He brings in Venezuela or South Korea, Cuba, or it's like unbelievable, really. So that's. I've been learning a lot from the John Bolton book. I recommend it to people. And of course, we know that what happened was John Bolton's home was raided. Trump sent in his personal Gestapo types to go and seize all his computers. I mean, he's mean and vindictive as well as ignorant. He's also nasty. And that's an unfortunate combination for an American president. Any comments?
It's easy to run into the trap and have a real go at what's happening there. But Steve Miller's got his president's ear, obviously. And Steve Miller is
he's like the Rudy Giuliani of today.
Yeah, times 10.
Yeah, whatever Steve Miller says, Trump trots out. I think the whole attack on Minneapolis, the whole ICE thing, is all Steve Miller having the... And I don't trust Steve Miller further than I can throw it, to be honest, because he's a really nasty piece of work.
He's a nasty piece of work, and he is just sharing the command around like Kirsty Noam. She's also a nasty piece of work. She's I say she's an empty-brained poser.
Yeah, she doesn't. These people don't. I mean, Steve Miller's intelligent in a nasty way.
Yeah.
Don't think the Noam person is, and that's what makes Steve Miller quite dangerous. I think I've said before, but I'll repeat that if you look at his history, I mean, when he was a kid, he was behaving grossly. He was brought up in a very privileged, gated community. He's from an extremely wealthy Jewish background in California. He doesn't know how poor people live. He doesn't care about it. And he used to, when he was in school, he would throw litter on the floor in the lunchroom and then tell the janitors to come and pick it up immediately. Like, who behaves like that? And he would say, come on, it's your job, pick it up, come on. And he'd humiliate people to come and do that. And he's been doing it ever since. This whole ICE thing is like humiliating brown and black people in the name of his, I don't know what, how he justifies any of his actions. But the trouble is, it's what he's used to because he's had a life of such extreme privilege. He's never seen it from the perspective of normal people. Mm. Now, Trump likes him because he's very wealthy and they share a similar racist attitude. Trump has just fired somebody else today because they happen to be a black woman from one of the agencies that is supposed to, the Labour Board. Yeah, the Labour Board of America. He's just fired the most important woman in that, who happens to be black. No due process, just a letter, executive order, you're out. It's tragic to watch it. I think, I'm not sure America really needs a president. I think maybe it's time to get rid of that post because crazy people seem to be attracted to it. If America's going to be a functioning democracy, why not go with the Florentine model, whereby they had elected officers who ran the state? I don't know. I hope people in America are thinking this through because we've seen what happens when a diseased, crazy guy gets to seize power like this. It's shocking.
Well, he's broken most of the rules in the book.
Yeah, which depend on people behaving decently.
Yeah.
He's not a decent person. He doesn't behave according to moral law.
Well,
And Plato has this brilliant quote. He said, look, if people in the junior levels of society, like cobblers and fishmongers and stuff, misbehave or are corrupt, it's not a big problem. But if the guardians of the state, the rulers, the leaders, the elders, the head statesmen become corrupt, then the whole of society becomes corrupt. And that's what we're seeing in America, which is tragic, in my opinion. So that's the other thing to say. I've been working on my book, which is my autobiography. It's going very well. It's very intense. 4 hours writing every day for the next 6 months. But, that's what I do. I'm a writer and I'm disciplined. And I will get through it. I'm up to 2021 at the moment, and it's really interesting looking back on that time in detail, what happened, and in world affairs and now, seeing how they've, moved on or not. The other thing to say, yes, the other thing about ICE, I do think it's disgraceful that this sort of Gestapo-type force has been conjured into existence by Steve Miller and Trump with a huge budget, and now he's going to take them as a kind of security guard. I think the Vice President's going to Italy, to the Winter Olympics, with ICE people as protection. I mean, who needs that? And I believe Italy's grumbling. I don't think they should let them in. I mean, this is shocking.
the mayor of
Milan, isn't it?
Milan says we shall have to refuse them entry to the country.
Well, I would have thought so. No,
But
it's just wrong.
when their prime minister is a good friend of Trump, so I guess it's,
I don't know. Good friend is the right word, but she's a canny stateswoman.
she's got his she's got his ear.
Well, he likes her because she's attractive and youthful, and part of his thing. And she pretends to go along with it. I don't think in her heart she could realise anything other than that the guy is mad, as the Pope does. And
Yeah, there is also the situation in Venezuela. They're trying. I don't think it's going exactly as per Mr. Trump's plan down there either.
well, we'll see what happens with this trial and whether he gets a fair deal.
Maduro now, probably
Maduro,
not.
and what happens. Then there's another thing to discuss. I mean, this is a very brief. It's sounding like the Young Turks broadcasts in America, which are very entertaining. But so let's move and talk about Iran and Israel. And a number of people have interestingly observed that there was a huge hype in the media. America about to attack Iran again, and then it didn't happen. Apparently, Trump said, "No, I'm not going to." And then immediately there's this vast release of Epstein files. Now, some people have joined these two things together. Is it possible that Israel is somehow behind this fast release of Epstein files. I think it's without doubt that they have all the Epstein material in Mossad in Israel.
They probably created it.
Well, I think all the evidence points to the fact that Epstein was in bed with Mossad, and yes, helped create a lot of it. So of course they're going to use that as a bargaining chip, which is why it was created. Why hasn't this all come out? Why do we? I don't know what's in this latest batch. I haven't seen it. I haven't got time to delve into the details. But I don't think it's very pleasant for Prince Andrew, is it?
No, apparently BBC is all over him now like a rash. So they forgot about the rest of the world.
Yes,
That's
well,
sort of a post note.
Yes. So, I mean, anyway, I think it's shocking what Epstein got up to, and that he thought he could get away with it, that he had that sort of privileged thing. He's very similar in my mind to Stephen Miller. They're from the same kind of elite Jewish moneyed community who think they're so privileged that nobody can touch them. Therefore their morality is whatever they want it to be. I listened to a very interesting interview with two Jewish rabbis sent to me by Moeen Yassin of Istanbul, and these are two God-fearing rabbis who actually follow Judaism. They're Hasids, and they were saying that in their view, what the state of Israel is doing is not according to Judaism at all.
Definitely
or the
not.
Torah, what they've done in Palestine, in Gaza, what they're doing every day. They're saying has no possible excuse in terms of the religion of Judaism. And these are fully accredited rabbis who are calling out the brutality of the state of Israel and giving chapter and verse as to why it's illegal in God's law what the state of Israel is doing. I also heard a very interesting interview with another Jewish commentator being asked about the Jewish community of Iran, which is often not spoken about, but I happen to know from personal friends who are Iranian that Jews are very welcome in Iran. They have synagogues in Tehran. They have a flourishing community. It's the largest Jewish community outside of Israel in the whole of Asia, in not just Tehran but other cities. And they have complete freedom of religion. They're respected people, and have been there for years, hundreds, probably over 1,000 or more. And the two rabbis that I mentioned were talking about how Iran actually made the rebuilding of the temple possible. The second temple, which had been destroyed, was rebuilt thanks to the Iranians, who were Zoroastrians at the time, and there are still Zoroastrians in Israel, in Iran, which I know some of them. So from an interfaith perspective, Iran is actually doing quite well. It has a flourishing Jewish community and also a Christian community. And so all this propaganda we see about Iran is false. And I think we should bear that in mind as we discuss these topics. And then I want to move on and look briefly at what's going on with Ukraine and Russia. Listening to John Bolton's book, it's very interesting because that was the beginning of all this stuff. He talks about when Zelensky was elected. He was on the call when that notorious phone call happened where Trump was sort of bargaining with Zelensky, find me some dirt on Hunter Biden and I'll give you more missiles kind of talk. That's gone down in history as a famous, notorious thing and led to his impeachment. I think personally that impeachment was flawed for only focusing on that issue. They should have addressed much wider issues. Trump's obvious Russian asset ship and all kinds of related matters. Instead, they focused only on that, and that meant he could get off. So anyway, what Bolton says about the origin of the Ukraine-Russia chaos is very interesting. Fast forward, Putin made a catastrophic error, in my opinion. Any sensible foreign policy expert would agree. In 2022, invading its neighbour, who it has no reason to have done so. They're similar people, they speak similar language, they have similar shared culture. They could have had fantastic trade deals and normal relationships. I mean, Putin spent his honeymoon in the Ukraine. It's a loved country by most Russians. Instead, he chose to send in his army. Now, what I've learned this year, there's been a new report by a think tank which specialises in security stuff. They now estimate that nearly 2 million Russians have died in this war so far. Civilians, but mainly on the front line, soldiers, which in proportion to the bigger picture and the population is a vast amount. It's the largest number of war dead since World War II in any war. The American wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, nothing near that figure. This is a huge loss. And the amount of territory they're gaining, they've worked it out, is as in the Somme in World War I. It's just a few feet a day, if you measure it up, for which thousands and thousands of Russians are dying. So the point of this report is, if you study the facts, if you look at the amount of dying and dead Russians and wounded, and then you measure up what they're gaining from it, it's nothing. It's just ridiculous. So anyone with any logical sense would negotiate a peace immediately, properly and seriously. If I was Putin, I would just withdraw entirely, do a Gorbachev, which is what he did from Afghanistan. There are more Russians now dying in Ukraine than ever happened in Afghanistan. And Gorbachev had the wisdom to say, no, enough, get out. It's not our fight, But I don't know why Putin doesn't. I think his lacking of moral intelligence is what's at stake here.
And he's also, what do you call it, going by his nose. When he's decided where to go, he's too stubborn and too proud to turn around.
And that is a sign of ignorance.
Yeah.
Gorbachev
did not have that problem because it wasn't his war. He didn't start it.
Yes.
But he saw where it was running. He saw which way it was going.
Yeah, and he saw it was hopeless and not in the interest of the Russian people. And families of bereaved soldiers told him end it, and he did. Putin is a stupid man. I'm sorry to have to say that. He's smart like Stephen Miller. He's clever, but he's stupid, and it's a dangerous combination.
He also feels, I believe, invincible.
Well, he's surrounded by a security bubble. He walks around like
nothing could ever
a judo guy. He may be personally invincible, but his country isn't, and they're dying for him and his ego. So one of the questions we discussed on the philosophical conversations on the 30th of January is, well, okay, so how do the little people of the world who want peace take back power from the evil, super controlling people that are dominating global affairs? How do we make a stand for peace and non-violence and diplomacy? That's the point of the European Peace Agency. I'm saying, well, let's get a think tank going, all European member states in part of it, and let's give it as much attention and energy and funding as we do the European Space Agency. That's one way of doing it. And then, other strategies. I'm an educator, so my strategy is education, learning. The trouble is, what do you do with people that are against knowledge, against learning, and against education? That's a new one for me. When I started out this work, 30 years ago, I thought, well, peace will come when enough intelligent people around the world who are well educated come together and discuss and make diplomacy and make peace treaties. It's logical. What I didn't foresee was that there'd be a vast backlash against that people in power, corrupt people, would start waging a war against ideas and against knowledge and against education, and seek to control, using the internet now as their tool, the way that people get information. So, these are new times we're in, and they are scary. But I still keep that faith. I still believe education is the answer. I just think we have to get even better at it and more sophisticated and counter the ignorance, because I don't think people want to be ignorant. I think deep down they know they're missing something out. They can't go to bed at night feeling very good about themselves. So anyway, that's what I've got for today. Any final comments before we move on and do a God card? I think we'll do a periodic table first. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't. I think we've been through most of it.
It's a lot to take in, but
It's
Greenland. You normally say Greenland.
Greenland. Yeah, I can say Greenland.
That's calmed down a bit, hasn't it?
Slightly. There's been huge demonstrations in Copenhagen with anti-American slogans. It's even worse than on the heights of the Vietnam War.
Well, good. I mean, it's about time the Danes, got off their sofas and hit the streets, because what Trump and America's doing is shocking.
But it's and you also got the streets of Minneapolis is also full of people, and streets and other towns and cities in the US is filling up with people protesting against ICE.
I think ordinary people, that's the power, the strength.
Yeah.
In France we believe in liberty, equality and fraternity. That's a message for ordinary people, ordinary French people. And that message went all around the world, and it was partly inspired by America's founding ideals. They've not lived up to them, and it's time to remind them. That's why I propose we should give them a nonagon on the top of the Pentagon. If things calm down and they get a decent government back, France would happily give them a nonagon for a peace academy funded like the Pentagon.
It seems like the triumph Arc de Triomphe that Trump is
he's wanting to make an Arc de Triomphe.
Arc de Triomphe, yeah. He wants it to overshadow any other things, any other memorials in DC. So he wants it 250 feet high, I've heard.
Well, there is a thing called megalomania, isn't there? It is a kind of recognised thing.
You probably have the Mexicans pay for it.
I mean, the other thing we discussed on that call was what do we do with people in power that are mentally ill? I mean, there is a provision in all governments, all constitutions, if a leader becomes mentally ill, they have to be asked to step down. That happened to King George III, who went crazy, sadly, in the UK history. And he was replaced by his son, George IV, who acted as Prince Regent. And I have a vested interest in George IV because he founded Brighthelmstone and turned it into a beautiful city and built the Royal Pavilion, which is where I grew up. So that was done in quite a civilised way, because poor old George wasn't up to governing. I think something similar should happen to Trump, actually. I mean,
there are
medical
words.
Intervention is called for.
There are words, but
it's in the Constitution. I mean, it's just got to happen. So let's see how soon it happens, because that is one strategy to solve these problems.
Should be impeached and jailed and never been able to communicate with anybody ever.
I don't think that's going to happen, because he controls, by using fear and blackmail and bullying, he controls the entire legal system of the states.
He owns it.
Well, that's what he thinks. So I don't think that'll happen, sadly. But I do think the mental health is the route to go down, and that would be a logical choice for the American Democrats and civilized populations, because nobody would want to see that country reduced to utter civil chaos, as has happened under Trump's watch.
I think it's a bit late. It's a bit late on the day to try to recover it now.
Yeah, well, I still love the American, ideals. I've travelled all around the States. I have friends all over. I have friends in academia mostly. There are so many good Americans. This is not America. This is
2/3 of them didn't vote for it. Isn't that what it say?
Yeah, this is a nefarious cult. Actually, it's like a cult that has stolen power in America. It's a white racist cult.
And they stepped up to vote, each and every one of them.
Well, and they probably fiddled some of the votes, and they've done gerrymandering, and they've played every dirty book every dirty trick in the book.
In the book, yeah.
And that's all, that's what Trump's good at. But he will fail, and in the end, evil doesn't prosper. And ignorance eventually has to meet itself in a mirror and get some remedial classes, if not in this world, then in the afterlife. And what I'm working on my book is, when I was doing my commentaries on the Quran, and 2 billion Muslims on the planet take that view, I would share that view. Christians also take the view. There is, as Kant said, this life is underwritten by the afterlife. This is only a small little glimpse we get. This isn't home permanently for any of us. This is like a railway station. We come through, have a life, and we move on. This is the railway station, like in that brilliant movie, Brief Encounter. And the death of my daughters brought that home to me. I thought she was a permanent fixture of my life for the rest of my life, but she's moved on. It's shocking to me. But what Kant said is that there has to therefore be some justice at the root of all existence. There has to be an ethics underpinning existence as human beings, or it wouldn't stand together. And so morally and ethically there has to be an afterlife and a judgment. And I 100% agree with that. Plato said that. The entire Greek mystery tradition was based on that. They gave you a little glimpse of that afterlife, because you can do that with certain forms of magical potions, psychedelics we call them now, which the Greeks would administer at the temple in Eleusis, outside of Athens. And all the wise Greeks used to go to the mysteries. They only did it twice in their lifetimes. They didn't do it like a party drug. It was like encountering your soul and a little glimpse of the afterlife. Plato did it, we know, Aristotle, everyone did. And once you do that, it teaches humility and love and compassion for your fellows. So that's where we're at here. So let's go and look at the periodic table then. Let's move on and see what we've got in the way of traditions to examine here.
What is that?
You've got, which one?
94.
Reiki.
Reiki.
Yeah, Reiki. Okay. Well, that comes from Japan, actually. It's a new religious movement. It's in that grey category of new religious movements. I know my daughter was interested in it. She didn't train in it. It would have been good if she had. But she'd had Reiki treatments. And basically it's a sort of spiritual healing practice that has come out of Japan, but it's universal. Founded by Mikao Usui, who had studied very widely in Buddhist, Shinto, Western spiritual healing. And he felt that you can train to become a vehicle for the transmission of spiritual energy, which can then heal people. And he developed certain practices that enabled this to happen. And I've seen it done, I've had it done to me. I've not trained in it, but I think it works. Its values are that one should cultivate universal compassion for all beings, benevolence. It has 5 core principles of right meditation, so you need to practice that. Right mental calmness and equanimity, not getting agitated. Right benevolence and honour to one's parents, teachers, elders and friends, so sort of benevolence to all. Right livelihood, so earn your living doing good work. And gratitude to all beings, very important. If you cultivate these 5 principles, you can attain inner poise and calmness in all situations. So when you practice this, you then are fit to be a healer, and you can then train to heal others who are disturbed, stressed, panicking, negative thoughts, suicidal, whatever. So it's an influential and important tradition. It's thought, I'm looking for the figures here, but about 200,000 trained practitioners on the planet. And it also draws on some Tibetan mystical teachings as well. The Japanese founders were interested in Tibetan traditions, because a lot of their Buddhist teachings come through Tibet. So it's a giving, wisdom tradition. Has it I suppose there are people in Norway that practice Reiki, are there?
I wouldn't know.
I believe there are.
No.
Certainly in Britain there are. Right, okay, now I'm going to do my go. Let's see what we get here. I'll do your method. Oh, right, we've got 129, which is philosophy, comparative and global philosophy. And this is kind of what I do, so it's quite appropriate. When I studied philosophy at the University of Bristol way back in the 70s, I was very frustrated by the intellectual narrowness of their definition of what philosophy is. It was the Western empirical scientific tradition. That was all. And anything outside of that was regarded as, not worth discussing. That meant all other religions, all other traditions like Islam, Judaism, everything else on the periodic table was regarded as like not worth it. Buddhism, no, nothing to see there. Well, I rebelled against that, and I went off back to Canada, where I was born, and studied independently using the University of Calgary in Alberta, and I studied all world traditions, which is why, eventually produced this. And I read in detail the source texts of all of them in a 4-year period of intense study. That was my real degree in global philosophy. You couldn't study that at the time. Throughout Western academia, there was no way you could do that. So I had to do it independently. Now there are a few places which do it. Hawaii University has a Centre for East-West philosophy. There are places in Western academia that have begun to do what I was doing 40 years ago. And there are other thinkers too. And if you go back in time, you find that actually that is what philosophy is supposed to be about. Pythagoras, who founded philosophy, he studied in Greece. He was partly Greek. He was fluent in Greek. He went to Delphi, went to all the Greek centres. But he also studied in Egypt. He studied with the sages of ancient Egypt. He learned in their temples about geometry and mathematics. He also was part Phoenician, so he went to the temples of Phoenicia and learned there about their views, which were profound because they'd brought the alphabet to Greece. The Phoenicians were incredibly sophisticated. He even went to Babylon and he studied there. He learned from the cuneiform peoples in their temples about Nebo and the gods. And by the way, I've just been studying Austin Layard, who was a British diplomat who discovered cuneiform because he was an archaeologist who went to Nineveh when it was the Ottoman Empire and discovered tens of thousands of tablets which were brought back to the British Museum, and we could decipher cuneiform from that. And that's what Pythagoras was doing. So he was travelling around, learning wherever he could. He had Druid friends. Abaris, one of his closest friends, was a Celtic Druid. So that is actually what philosophy is. And what he was doing was finding the wisdom within all these lineages. The same with Plato, his successor really, although they didn't meet. Plato was a few generations later, and Aristotle. They wanted to know everything about all the lineages of thought. And then you find this in the entire later philosophical tradition. Ibn Arabi in Islam was a polymath who studied everything. Ibn Sina in Islam. Maimonides, the great Jewish philosopher, the greatest sage. In England, Britain, we had Lord Herbert of Cherbury, who was the greatest sort of seeker of universal wisdom in the 1600s in Britain. He wrote about truth, which is hidden in all the traditions. So this is the study of comparative and global philosophy. And I give a list of names. I mean, Hegel in Germany did the same when he was professor at the University of Berlin. If you read Hegel properly, as I've done, he was a master of every single box. He'd studied them all. He didn't have access to all of them because it was like the early 1800s, and it wasn't all known. But what he could get his hands on: Buddhism, Sufism, Kabbalah, Hermetical traditions, ancient wisdom. He studied them all, and he put them into a synthesis, which to him is the core message of what philosophy is about, which is bringing wisdom to us all. It shouldn't be hoarded. It doesn't belong up there in some elite club. You know, it should be for everyone. It's our daily bread. It's how we survive as humans. We are Homo sapiens. And that inner wisdom is our birthright, all of us. That was the point of Hegel's wisdom, and I agree with it. If that makes me a left Hegelian, then fine, so be it, because that was the tradition that Marx and others came from and said, you know, we need to apply this wisdom to ordinary people. And I agree with that as a social democrat and a liberal democrat. So that is comparative and global philosophy, and it shouldn't be hoarded by any one religion or any one elite group, any one bunch of rabbis or imams or priests. No, this wisdom is universal, just as Pythagoras discovered, as Plato, as all the great thinkers I'm talking about. And it belongs to all of us. That's why I record and do these philosophy clubs, because it's us here. And it's our collective wisdom that's now on the streets of Minneapolis or Copenhagen, protesting against the corruption in high places, the ignorance that's been going on. They've stolen our thunder and are now misusing that power. Time to reclaim it. And as Feuerbach said, we have to reclaim it back to our human essence, which is our right to wisdom. So that's that one. That's a great one. I love that. And if you're interested, get the book and read the details, or go on the website. Right. I think after that we need a couple of gods. What do you say? Any questions about that before we go on?
No.
Okay. Good. Right, I'll hold out for you.
Shouldn't be greedy.
No, just the one's enough. You got one?
Still two.
Okay, give me one back. Thank you. Right.
Helios. 4 of fire. Shamash.
Okay, Helios. Well, that brings me to IMBOLC, because Helios is the god of the sun and Shamash. There's 2 cards on one here. So you got your double. And IMBOLC is the first glimmering, according to the Druids, of the return of the sun, the return of spring. It's the time when the snowdrops appear in the gardens of Wales, where I used to live for 7 years. And this time of year I love it, because it's the first little hint of spring and warmth. And so that's why we celebrate today in the Druid community, IMBOLC. And, you know, I can't... it's been a cold winter here in La Creuse, and I'm looking forward to the sun coming back, to be honest. There is a nature reserve on an island off the south coast of France, which is dedicated to Helios, in fact. It's got some name associated with that. It's a naturist place, so you're not allowed to wear clothes, which is a thing the French enjoy doing. So at the moment that wouldn't be possible in the cold winter, but in the summer it becomes feasible, and we can all go down to the south of France and enjoy the beautiful sunlight. So that's a good card to get, and it's very appropriate for this day of IMBOLC. There's a whole story, the mythology of Helios is interesting. And you know, he was thought to drive the sun as a kind of chariot in the sky. Plutarch, who was the priest of Apollo at Delphi and was at that time the chief of the Delphic Games, he writes that it's through love of the sun that the moon herself makes her circuit and has her meetings with him to receive from him all fertility. Personally, I love Plutarch. I like that Delphic Apollo tradition that he represented. And he was a learned man, old Plutarch, so he knew about Helios, because to him the sun and the moon are in love with each other. So, what's not to love here? Okay, I'm going to do, can I have that other box? I'm going to do a goddess card to balance the god card, because in honour of Sophia, my dear daughter, she gave me these goddess cards, and so we'll do one of those to balance the god card. I've still been pursuing the cause of her death. I've been asking questions under freedom of information to find out how she died, and that's my devoted duty as a father, because I'm not prepared to just let her death go unexplained, as has happened. Something terrible went on, and I want to know how, why, and who. So Sophie, this is an interesting goddess actually, and she told me about this goddess called Akilanda, and I hadn't really heard of her before. Akilanda is page 96. She represents the essence of the phoenix. She's the indestructible energy that embraces change. And she knows that everything is conspiring to transform her into only more love and light. She's from Hindu traditions, which Sophie loved as well as I do. And the name means female power or goddess power. But also, Akilanda means never not broken. So, this goddess is about accepting our brokenness. In Sophie's case, accepting even death. But knowing you're immortal, knowing you're not broken, in spite of it. I mean, America looks broken. But no, it's not, because it's always been broken. The horrors we're seeing, well, they happen with the conquest of the American Indians. All kinds of horrors have been going on in American history. Even Vietnam War, the whole sort of war on the left that the right has been doing in America since Nixon's day. It's always been this. America's always been broken. But in spite of that, Akilanda teaches us that the people rise supreme once again. In spite of that, the Palestinian people are experiencing this. Akilanda's, there are people who've been broken cruelly and horrendously, and yet they will survive. Their immortality is guaranteed from the divine spheres, is what this card teaches us. So we are broken, but we are also whole. We survived this. So the intention given in the card is everything happens for my liberation. I choose to become only more love. So the important thing is, even though you see crazy people running countries and misbehaving and talking nonsense, don't fall to their level. Stay above. Stay with the God sphere. Stay with the wisdom sphere. That is your truth, our truth. Stay with philosophy. Honour the sages. Honour the saints. And we'll get through this. Right, I'm going to finish with a poem, just to end, because I'm also a poet, as some people realise, and I think that poetry is the final language that lasts when all the prose is done. Poetry is the oldest language. This is a poem I wrote about the Paleolithic, which in France happened only the other day here in the Dordogne, doing cave paintings, hunting, living, food gathering and so on. The Paleolithic is news, really, from France. So this is a poem about the Paleolithic. Wisdom's blendings, words mendings, spiral downloads, dripping, soothing, never endings. Caves contained crescendos, ecstasy's story, couplings, tinglings, memories, flickerings, fiery possibilities, ancient ages, tingling, mercurial, muttering mantras, witches, ethereal, Luke, the ever learning, the ever unlearned, the ever ascending, the ever unmastered, Luke, the light returning, the coming home, the being bone, the being alone. Melded and blended, bone carried across through the egg and onwards into love's yearnings. Ever reblended, egg mixed in with yolk and the joke of the journey, and the giant's causeway leaping spacewards into the on-dreaming, lifted and made whole, loved and made soul. It's a little poem. I can imagine a shaman in the glittering caves of the Dordogne speaking aloud in some moment of ecstasy. We don't quite know what their language was, but it was probably a form of early Proto-Celtic, possibly Proto-Basque. We don't know. It's a very ancient language. But I can see that kind of a poem coming. That's why I call it poetry from the Paleolithic. It was a sort of shamanic channeling I did. So that's from volume 7 of my poems. And I'm currently working on volume 8. And yesterday I went to the library here in the village. I'm one of the village librarians. And I worked on my poetry. I've now decided I'm going to work on my poems in the library. And it's a sacred space for that. And I'm determined to get volume 8 published, because these are poems up to 2020. Well, 5 years of poems are in volume 8. And to be honest, they are quite amazing. I've been revisiting them. Because often I write a poem and then I don't reread it. That's why I like to publish them. So I'm looking forward to getting volume 8 out. It'll be over the next few months, I think. Right, let's finish there. Okay. Thank you very much. And let's hope no more tragedies happen this week. We have enough of those. Thank you.